HarperCollins and Harper Audio present Great Escapes No. 3, Civil War Breakout, written by W. N. Brown and edited by Michael Teitelbaum. Performed by Adam Verner. Chapter 1. The New Arrival.
Yankees, keep 'em moving!
On a sweltering hot September afternoon in 1863, Union Colonel Thomas Rose swatted away mosquitoes as he shuffled down the dusty Richmond, Virginia street. He was one in a long, slow-moving line of captured Union soldiers. Dehydrated and exhausted, the soldiers struggled to keep upright as Confederate guards on horseback barked orders. Yet despite his parched throat and sore, bleeding feet, Rose managed to hold his head high and keep pace with his horse-riding enemy. He refused to let the Confederates, or rebels, as he thought of them, see him suffer. Ahead of him in line, a younger officer stumbled and nearly collapsed. "If we don't get some water soon," Rose thought, his black hair and beard dripping with sweat, "we're all gonna keel over." Rose didn't know where the Confederates were taking the 70 Union soldiers they'd captured. He and his fellow Northerners had come all the way from Chickamauga, Georgia, where they'd been taken prisoner by the Confederates and herded into overcrowded cattle cars. It had taken 2 days to reach Richmond by train, making stops along the way in South and North Carolina, where they were insulted and spat on by the local townsfolk. The men were given some water but no food, and there was no room to sit or lie down. Now, as Rose marched in the suffocating Virginia heat, his belly ached from hunger. "Halt!" a Confederate yelled. The prisoners stopped in their tracks. Rose raised his eyes to peer through a steamy haze of kicked-up dust. Ahead of him, an enormous 3-story brick building loomed. Libby Prison. "It looks more like a warehouse than a prison," Rose thought. Built on the outskirts of town, a few yards from the James River, the monstrous edifice with barred windows was to be his home for the foreseeable future. He realized that if it were this hot outside, inside wouldn't be any cooler. Rose shuddered, knowing that once they entered the prison, some of his fellow soldiers, and even Rose himself, might never leave. Thunderheads rumbled in the distance, the dark clouds rolling across the sky like advancing cavalry. As Rose watched, 2 Confederate officers rode their horses over from the prison stables. Surely that man riding in front isn't in charge of the prison, Rose thought. He doesn't look a day over 25. "Welcome home, boys," the young man shouted in a thick Southern accent from atop his horse. He was sharply dressed in a gray Confederate frock coat, its polished gold buttons almost blinding in the sun. A commanding officer's hat shaded a narrow, clean-shaven face. To Rose, he almost seemed like a kid playing dress-up in his father's clothes. "My name's Major Thomas Turner. I'm the commander of this prison. My second in command is the old boy to my right, Warden Dick Turner. No relation." Rose glanced over at the commander's underling. Unlike his boyish-looking superior officer, the older Warden Turner had a scarred face and a yellow, rotten-toothed grin. He held a bullwhip in his right hand. "Y'all mind the rules, and we'll get along fine," Major Thomas Turner continued. "Step out of line, you'll wish you were dead. See, old Dick here used to run a plantation, so he knows how to run a tight ship." Around Rose, a few of the other prisoners shuffled uneasily. He knew they were thinking of the reports they had heard of the brutal conditions of Southern slave plantations and the cruel nature of plantation overseers. Rose was a Northerner who believed that slavery must be abolished. Although many of his fellow Northerners were indifferent about the plights of enslaved people in the South, Rose was proud to lay his life on the line in honor of his belief. He wasn't alone. If the newspapers were to be believed, more than 2 million Northerners of all backgrounds had joined the fight to end slavery and keep the country together. At the same time, about 1 million Confederates were fighting to hold on to their state's legal rights.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?